From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hello. It's not every day that we get to have Lady Gaga and RuPaul's Drag Race welcoming us to the Coolidge Auditorium. So this is a great event. Good evening and happy Pride. On behalf of the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden, I want to welcome you to the Library of Congress tonight. It's great to see everybody here tonight for what was a sold-out event celebrating Pride Month, so we're very excited about that. My name is Travis Painter, and I'm the chair of the library's LGBTQ+ employee organization. It's called LC Globe. LC Globe was organized 24 years ago, and we are proud to represent the library's LGBTQ+ employees. For nearly a quarter of a century, LC Globe has provided resources and information and supported the library's collections by hosting educational, cultural, and professional programs. We're excited to co-host tonight's event in celebrating a brilliant author tonight. He's the writer of several award-winning novels, including the bestseller Call Me By Your Name, and that was adapted to an Academy Award-winning screenplay and Best Picture nominee. We're honored to have tonight Mr. André Aciman. We're eager to hear him talk about the Call Me book and movie, his memoir, literary inspirations, and many other things. First, I want to thank our partners who helped make this evening a success: the LGBT Congressional Staff Association, CSA, the Senate Glass Caucus, and the organizers of Capitol Pride, of course. I want to encourage you to visit the library's display that we have out front. Right when you came in, you probably saw it. We have amazing items from our LGBT collection here at the library. We have iconic poetry from Walt Whitman. We have some of the manuscripts from the founder of LGBT activism here in Washington, D.C., Frank Kameny. And we have the papers of Jonathan Larson. He was the composer of musical Rent, and it has his handwritten notes of how he did the math tabulation for Seasons of Love. 525,600 minutes from the song Seasons of Love. And so I hope you enjoy that song being in your head for the rest of the night. We want to remind you that tomorrow, along with the Pride celebrations for this week, we have another author coming, and it will be Becky Albertalli. She was the author of Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda, and that also turned into the movie Love, Simon. So we hope you can join that as well. For tonight's event, following the discussion, there will be a book signing over in Whittle Pavilion. You passed it on your way into this. And books will be for sale, so you're able to purchase over there. André Aciman, again, is an award-winning writer. He's the writer of many works of short fiction and nonfiction, including his 1995 memoir, Out of Egypt, and that won him the Whiting Award. He's also the author of several novels, including, as we know, Call Me By Your Name, which won the 2007 Lambda Literary Award, and his latest novel, Enigma Variations. The New York Times describes Mr. Aciman and his work as a magnificent and living thing, and I think we all that have read his books understand that to be true. He'll be interviewed tonight by the Library of Congress Chief Communications Officer, Roswell, Encina. And like many of you, he has read this book, Call Me By Your Name, at least 3 times and counting. So please help me welcome now to the Library of Congress, Mr. André Aciman.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and happy Pride, as Travis said. So we're so happy that you're all here at the Library of Congress tonight. And of course, we're here for this gentleman. So I'm hoping that you're all anxious to hear what he has to say. You're having such a year, aren't you?
It has been
It's been the past 2 years. How's it been?
Unusual, very busy, but gratifying no end. I mean, I never expected this, so it was wonderful. And basically, the trick is get a movie made, and then the rest just falls into place.
Well, as you see, I've been a complete nerd for the past 2 weeks and, pouring through your books with all these tabs and stuff, so my boss was very proud of me. Your Uncle Billy said in your memoir, aren't we or aren't we? I think he used to say this when he was boasting about his success or when he did something really good. Could you be asking yourself that now?
Am I or am I not?
Yes.
No, I'm not. You have to be sort of arrogant in the most vile manner to say, hey, am I or am I not? And it was a very boastful thing to say. And when you heard him say it, it was like, please, don't say this. Don't boast. We don't boast in this family. But he was all boast, and I don't boast. So I'm saying, I wouldn't be writing the kind of books I write if I were a boastful person.
Well, for the folks who haven't read your memoir, it came out in the mid-90s, Out of Egypt. It's about your childhood when you were growing up in Alexandria, Egypt. The characters between your father, your mother, and all your extended family, there's a lot of fun stories, a lot of sad stories wrapped into the crisis that was happening in Egypt at the same time. How did that shape you as a writer growing up?
I think I always wanted to be a writer because one day I wrote a poem. I don't know why I wrote the poem, but everybody said, oh, he's a poet. He's very good. And it was a dreadful poem because I read it many years later. I said, how could you even show it to your father? But they were all very pleased. And so I realized that if I write more poetry, that I'll get more sort of accolades. And in fact, they did. The stuff I wrote was gibberish, but it doesn't matter. But I did like the idea of being a writer. And I think since I was 10 years old, I was always invested in the idea of becoming a writer. I wanted to go to law school, and then I said, you're going to be a lawyer? I was never going to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to be in business school, and I thought about it. I can't even do anything, much less sell anything. So, so it was always literature for me, ever since I was a kid.
Well, you talk about like a place that doesn't exist anymore, and it's so beautiful. And you end the book by saying you've always hated the place, but on your last night, you fell in love again.
I did, and that is one of the biggest things about writing, is that essentially you can change anything you say in this minute. I wrote about Egypt where I suffered a lot, and at the very end of the book, I say, here I am looking out to the sea. This is my last night ever in my whole life. I knew that. In Alexandria. And Alexandria is never going to be the same, and I never knew how much I loved this city. Except that I had written, I never knew how much I hated this city. And my editor said, you can't do that. You've been saying that you loved and longed for this Egypt, and now you say you hate it. I said, do you want me to change that? And she said, absolutely, you have to change that. I said, fine. So I crossed out the word hatred, and I put in the word love. And it was very easy. But that's what writing does. You can make up things as you go along. And that's the joy of it, is that none of it has to be true.
Is that what attracted you to writing? The making up stuff? Just based on your memoir, you admit that you weren't really good at school when you were in Egypt.
I was terrible at school. I hated school. I still hate school. And I'm a professor. And I get total anxiety in the fall. As soon as fall approaches, it means school is going to start. Summer vacation is over. I get anxious. And I look at my students, I said, aren't you guys anxious? They said, no, we are looking forward to it. I said, what kind of people are these? Anyway.
So your memoir was your first major published book.
Yes.
You had a lot of essays and short stories written that you wrote right afterwards. Then what was the tipping point that you decided, it's time for me to write a novel?
I did. I wrote a chapter of a novel about a man who meets a woman at a party, and they clearly are in love or will be in love or might be in love. I never made up my mind, but it was published in the New Yorker, and I said, okay, and so publishers right away, as soon as they see anything in the New Yorker, they contact you, and they said, you want a contract? So I said, yes, I do want a contract. So we signed a contract right away. I loved the contract. Then I started writing the book, and it was a difficult book, basically because the man and the woman, I didn't want them to have sex right away. I wanted them to wait a few days, which people looked at me when every time I told them the story, said, how many days? And so eventually I needed to take a break. And so I started something else called Call Me By Your Name.
Well, speaking of sex.
Yes. I wasn't going to go there.
Well, I just want to point it out that you are a straight man
Yeah.
with a beautiful wife and 3 grown kids.
Yes.
That said, who were your inspirations for these gay characters, and why did you decide to make your first book about gay characters?
Well, it wasn't even a character, it started with a house. It was a house in Italy, and I was going to go to that house in Italy, and I was fantasizing about the house, and then I said, okay, there's going to be a bit of romance. And this is all happening while I'm stopping this other novel, which I'm on contract for. So that's not out of my mind. So, and then I said, okay, it's going to be a boy and a girl, and he's 17, and she's whatever. And then I said, no, he's got to have to, it's going to be 2 guys. And that, as soon as that happened, as soon as that decision was made, I decided, I just got consumed. It just wrote itself, as if it was waiting since my birth to be written. And it wrote itself in 3 months, and I was done. Wow. And I remember I was visiting Washington with my family, and I'm reading in the train the finished manuscript and correcting it. And so it was done sometimes, I think, less than 3 months, actually. It was very, very fast. And then I went back to the other book, which was a disaster. Nobody reads it.
Somebody on Twitter actually asked to ask you, how do you know everything about the things that matter? I mean, that goes back to what Elio said, and I have it on page 72 here.
Yeah.
He says, I know nothing, Oliver. Nothing, just nothing. You know more than anyone around here, Oliver says. Why was he returning my near-tragic tone with bland ego boosting? If you only knew how little I know about the things that really matter.
Things that matter in that particular context is his, I don't know if it's love, lusting for, longing for Oliver. That's what really matters to him. At that point in his life, this is all he cares about, and he's trying to hide it. And so when they have this conversation, which wasn't easy to write, that was the only time that I had difficulty writing, because I didn't want him to say, Oliver, I think I'm falling for you, which would have been very gawky and awkward and okay. I wanted him to not want to say, but it sort of slips out of his mouth, and the other person immediately suspects what's going on. Nobody knows, nobody said anything, but they both know what they were talking about. And I wanted it that way. But what really matters is that he is longing for Oliver.
You talk about longing, or you describe longing,
Right.
and I guess lust in Call Me By Your Name and in your latest novel, Enigma Variations, very beautifully. Actually, one of the reviews by the New York Times says, Aciman writes arousal so beautifully, you miss it when it's gone. How do you feel about that?
It's nice. It's very nice. I forgot that line, but it makes me like some kind of prophet of desire, you know.
I should say though, who inspired you, or what inspired you?
To write this book.
Yes.
Well, when I was a boy, I was 9 or 10 years old, and I was in Egypt. And there was a beach area where we rented a house every year. It was the same beach house. And right across the house, there was a volleyball court where people used to sort of gather in the afternoon to avoid the sun, and then they would play volleyball. And I was 9 or 10, and there was a guy who was probably 17, 18 years old. I never knew. And I wanted to be his friend. And he was the macho of the group. He commanded everybody. Everybody followed what he wanted to do. He was the captain of the volleyball team. I was not even in the volleyball team. But I wanted him to be my friend. And it was very disturbing, because I never quite understood what it is that I wanted from him. And I still don't know what I wanted from him, because I knew nothing. And if I had suspected something, I would have snuffed it out right away. But that was the inspiration for the story. It's about a boy, or an adolescent in this case, who has a very clear longing for an older man. And I wanted it to be sexual as opposed to just nothing. That was the seed of the story. And then it went in its own direction.
Let's talk about the title, or the line in the book, Call Me By Your Name. Where did this come from? I mean, because it's so tender and very innocent. I think that's what we all kind of like about the book.
Well, it's ideally, it's a swapping of identities. It means call me by your name. In other words, I want to have your name and you're going to have my name. And we're going to not know where I begin and where you end and whatever. But it came to me because I had two friends, and they were a gay couple, female gay couple, and they had the same name. And so, I mean, you think I would make this up? But they did have the same name, and they were very close friends. One of them died eventually. But they had the same name, and I always wondered when they were having sex, and in a moment... Okay, I'll shut up.
Keep going.
No, but I always thought, what do they say?
That may never be my problem.
Well, but the idea came to me that, if they call each other and meaning the other person, what if they took a step forward and when I call you such and such, which is your name, it's really my name I'm using. And that swapping of identities, I think, if you think about it, the most beautiful thing that can happen in life, it's not lasagna, and it's not Proust, it's none of those things. It is really being intimate with another person, being completely, shamelessly intimate with somebody else. In other words, you have no more inhibitions because you've left them out. They've been out. And that, I think, is the best thing in life. I can't think of anything better.
And there's so many instances in the book that address that, from
Yes.
toilet scene in Rome to everything else.
Basically, I had to go to vomit, to toilet, and to everything, just to make the point if you didn't get it. And of course, don't forget fruit.
I'm not sure if you're opening a window for me to start talking about that, but we'll get there in a second, though. So how much from your personal life are the characters? I know you could speak French and Italian and Greek, and Elio does too.
Yes, Elio does. He doesn't speak French in the book. He speaks French in the film. But the film basically figured it out, that you have a cosmopolitan family. They're living in Italy, but they could be living in North Africa, as far as I'm concerned. And that was a moment of genius and necessity on the part of the director, who figured there's got to be something more ample to give that family, and that's what they did. I am Elio. I am very much like Elio. I am hesitant, timid, diffident, insecure, inhibited, the whole thing. And I think that's what Elio is. Oliver is somebody totally different. Oliver is almost arrogant. He's self-confident. He is the kind of person that I never understood. People who are self-confident, I usually don't even want to talk to them because there's nothing to say. They don't want you to think too much. And so people ask me all the time, could you please write Call Me By Your Name from the point of view of Oliver? I said, Oliver would never write a book.
He'll correct you. So many has called Call Me By Your Name like the successful gay novel, or the successful crossover gay movie. Over the weekend, there's been a lot of discussion. Booker winner Alan Hollingsworth says the gay novel is dead. Then a writer from The Guardian came back and says, gay stories still need to be told. Last night I was at an author event at Politics and Prose with the latest Pulitzer Prize winner, Andrew Sean Greer, and he piped it as well. And he says that there should be no gay fiction or gay erotica or gay nonfiction, and then they should all just be fiction and nonfiction and erotica. Where do you stand on this?
Oh, God, I don't know. It seems like, basically, I think, there was a time when they said the author was dead. Then the author turns out not to have been dead. They said the novel was dead, and the novel is not dead. We like novels. In fact, we like 19th century novels. Who are we kidding? You know, I don't know. I mean, I think that people want stories, whether they're true or not. The people love memoirs now. They're consumed. And so I think they're wrong. There's no such thing as a dead. I was told when I was writing my other love story, oh, nobody writes a love novel any longer. Those are dead. Well, they're not dead because we want to see romance in the movies. When you go on a plane, you know, Notting Hill is still played all the time. It certainly is not dead. And then there's Love Actually also. on the same thing that you have to click, whatever. So I usually go from one to the other, and I've seen them a million times.
A friend of mine describes both the book and the movie as very positive, and I tend to agree. A lot of gay movies or gay novels always have, it's very tragic. Either it's connected to AIDS, or they get beat up, or just something really awful happens to them. But with this one, and with some new novels, like the author that we have tomorrow, the Simon versus Homo sapien agenda, it's just love and relationships, and I think whether you're straight or gay, black or white, Republican or Democrat, you could all relate to it. But do you agree with that?
I certainly do. I think that we discussed this before. Basically, the typical 19th century opera always had a woman who had basically misled her life or was leading the wrong life. And she has to die at the end, and she dies of tuberculosis. I mean, this is the typical ending, you know, or she has a bad cold and she dies. She has to be put away. For those of you who've seen the movie High Noon, at the very end of the film, the woman who is, I think she is Latina, she has to be gotten rid of. She takes the train and leaves. But she could have been killed. It would have had the same effect. Basically, you want to get rid of the person who's creating the problem. And as I didn't want that. I wanted basically, because it's a distraction. It is true that AIDS existed and still exists, and one has to sort of deal with that. But eventually, what really matters to somebody who is young and desires someone else, he wants to bring about the object of his desire, which is to have sex with a person and to have a relationship. So to have other things coming in the way, it becomes a bit of a distraction, a necessary distraction. It's politically correct to have that distraction, but fundamentally, it's not necessary. And what the beauty of a romance is the fact that it can happen in a household that welcomes it, among parents who are not going to give you trouble. There are nobody in the street is going to prevent you from kissing in the street. Nobody's going to beat you up, and there's no AIDS or whatever. And I wanted it because I wanted to focus on desire and not fear.
Speaking of accepting parents, I think I could probably speak on everybody here in the room. One of the best parts of the book is the father's monologue towards the end.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, as a gentleman who came out in his 20s, I was hoping that my father would give me the same monologue if he was alive today. What was your inspiration for that speech?
It was actually my father, because my father was a very, very open-minded person. I've said this in public. I mean, in the 1960s, when we had all this sexual revolution, he used to make fun of it. He says, "What's new? What are they saying that's new?" Basically, and my father said, essentially, he was always telling me, you have to go and sleep with someone. This is not going to go on, okay? Because I was always reading books.
And I think Elio's father tells him the exact same thing.
Exactly, and I showed my father the passage. I said, "Do you recognize yourself?" And he did. He was dying at the time, but of course that's a different issue. But the point is that my father was he was a brilliant man. He was extremely well-read and had been a great businessman. So he had both ends of the spectrum, and he was a womanizer. There's no question. My mother didn't like that very much, but she didn't have much choice. But my father had once given me a piece of advice which stayed with me for the rest of my life. He says that whatever you do with a human being, once your clothes are off, there is no shame left. In other words, nothing that you do naked is wrong, as long as you don't kill somebody else, okay? But essentially, that was such a freeing thing. He said, once your clothes are off, then everything is okay. There's nothing you should be ashamed of. If you think about it, there are certain things that we might want to do. But my father said, don't even think of it, do it. And
well, before we take questions from the audience, I want to hear your take on the movie.
Okay.
How do you feel about the ending?
The ending. When I heard about the ending, because the director said, as we're walking through the piazza and he's minding a million things, at the end of the movie, we're going to have Elio looking into the camera and he's going to be crying. And of course, I said, that's very nice, Luca. I told the director, of course, I'm muttering to myself, who wants a boy crying? Because that was not in the book. And it's not the kind of ending I would have envisaged. Crying in front of the camera because he's brokenhearted, really, that got me a bit annoyed. But then I saw the film, and I thought, oh my God, this is a better ending than my book.
Well, I don't know about that.
And I told him that. I've said that to him twice because he didn't believe me the first time. It is an amazing ending. We've never seen an ending of a film like that. In other words, there was such a long wait. For those who didn't know the story, you had no idea where it was headed. And that is a wonderful thing, because you just are incubating in this Italy thing for a while, and you don't know where we're going. And suddenly you have a moment in which Elio realizes that he's really interested more than he had let on. And then you have the very ending of the movie, which takes about 3 to 4 minutes of actual sort of staring into a camera. Where have you ever seen that, with the music in the background? And I thought it was a wonderful ending, because it wasn't just moving. It was, I think it was a moment of recollection for Elio. Basically, he's going through the whole episode of their summer together. And then suddenly, as you're watching the scene, and I don't know, how many of you have seen the film? Oh, okay, fine. Okay, I shouldn't ask it. But basically, at some moment, it's a wonderful moment, because suddenly, and this has never happened before, ever in my life, you see the credits coming on. And as soon as you see the credits, you say, oh my God, this is the end of the movie. The story is over. Oh gosh. Basically, because you thought maybe there's hope. Maybe something is going to happen. And as soon as you see the credits, there's a kind of finality about credits, and they come in very softly, unannounced. There's no clamorous music in the background where it's the end of the movie. You pick up your coat and you want to leave. Here you don't. And so you want to stay until the very, very end. I thought it was a wonderful ending.
Who read the book? But, I mean, there's that whole part in Rome, the whole San Clemente syndrome. I mean, I think it kind of illustrated of what could have been. And I felt like that's what was missing from the movie, and I kind of wanted to see that more. Do you feel the same way, or is that just me?
Well, when I met James Ivory and Luca, I met them together in a restaurant, and they said, this is what we want to do. We're really very excited. Yeah, of course they have to tell me that, okay? And I'm going, yeah. They said, well, we're going to sort of dilute the scene in Rome. I said, well, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Actually, we're going to reduce it quite a bit. I said, yeah, sure, I can see that. That's fine with me. Well, actually, Andre, we're going to eliminate it altogether. And I'm going, okay, fine. You know, it's fine. But it also explains why there's a need and talk of a sequel, because the Roman part for me was the most intellectually satisfying, because nothing happens in Rome, but they're together and they're going from one restaurant to a bar to a book reading to a company together, and you suddenly have the feeling that Elio, for the first time in his life, is among adults. And he says, this is the life I've wanted, to just be in Rome on an evening with people who have read all the books in the world and know all the music in the world. And I'm among my own. And he's there, and he's with Oliver, and people are talking about them. Look at these two. They're totally in love. And basically, it's the most welcoming thing he's ever seen. So that part is missing from the movie. And so they moved it to Bergamo, and it's a shorter scene. But I understand that the Roman thing can eat up the whole movie. Yeah. And it made perfect sense to avoid it.
You mentioned a sequel. Do you think there's enough there to make a sequel between the scenes in Rome and the flash forward at the end of the book?
The sequel is going to be a bit of a problem, because you're going to have to bring in novel information. And that makes me a bit nervous, because it might be distracting from what is actually the story itself, so that the story might move elsewhere. And we don't know where that might be. And we still don't know that there is going to be a sequel.
I mean, there's talk that they may fold in the AIDS crisis.
Yes, he wants to do that, because he's been told, there's no AIDS here. What are you going to do? And so, okay, fine, we're going to have AIDS, okay? But it's still up with talking, with just talking. So I have no idea if it's ever going to happen.
Speaking of the movie, how many of you caught that he's in the movie? He's if you watch it again, he's one of the two guests, you know, the couple that was gay. Yeah.
Look at this.
I honestly caught it on my third time I watched it, so I didn't really notice it at first. How was that?
It was the most brilliant piece of acting in the movie. No, it wasn't. Basically, I arrived in Italy. They said that we want you on the set. So I said, well, I'm going to go to, we arrived in Milan, and so I said, I'm going to sleep because I wanted to catch up. He said, no, he wants you right now. So I go there, and they said, we want you in the movie. I said, what do you want me to do? They had asked for my size, and I never understood why they wanted my size. But they put me in this ridiculous costume, because I made the characters ridiculous, and there was a reason. Then my partner has the same suit on, so we both look totally ridiculous. And he's the producer of the film, the partner. So we're like basically, as I like to say, free talent. Talent is in quotation marks. But it was wonderful. It was a lot of fun. I was not nervous. He said, you know, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And I did, and it was a lot of fun.
It looked like you were having a lot of fun. How many takes did you do?
4, which was nothing, if you think about it. But it wasn't that important. It was almost incidental, but it brought up something about Elio, which is, I thought the scene was important for me as a writer because I wanted to have the cliche gay couple come in and look, as the father says, do you dislike them because they're gay or is it because they're ridiculous? So, and they are ridiculous, and what I wanted is to, on the same night that these two guests are there being whatever they are, ridiculous, whatever, they're a good couple, upstairs, Elio and Oliver are going to have their first night together.
Midnight was going to happen.
Yes, and so I wanted the contrast to be there, and they kept it.
I know everybody here probably wants to ask you now that you know that you were in the movie, how was it with, you know, Armie Hammer and Timothy Chalamet?
Oh, you know what? They're wonderful people. Armie Hammer called me Mr. Aciman. I said, are you joking? I mean, he's very nice. So Timmy is also very nice. He went to school in the same school where my kids went. So it's the whole Upper West Side thing. And lovely, lovely, lovely character, both of them. And Michael Stolberg is also very nice. He's much younger than he looks in the film. And I thought he should have gotten an Oscar for that part. Just for the monologue, he needed an Oscar. It was the best thing I've seen in years.
I love that you call him Timmy.
Timothée, okay.
So let's take some questions from the audience. I know you're dying to hear from everyone, so there's going to be people running around with microphones like Phil Donahue and Oprah. And I'll let you point to it.
This is the first time I see the audience. Well, there's a lot of you.
Yeah. So after I read the book the second time, I read Enigma Variations, and I was really struck by the intersection between the two books, especially because the San Clemente syndrome discussion in Rome at the end of Call Me By Your Name is about bisexuality, which is the theme of Enigma Variations. I'd love to hear how you think the two books connect to each other, and especially about the first section of Enigma Variations, which seems very parallel to young Elio.
The first section of Enigma Variations, for those of you, I'm not going to give away the story, but it is about a young boy who's 12 years old who has a crazy, crazy crush on a man who's in his late 20s, who is a cabinet maker and comes to their house to fix the furniture. And he goes and visits the cabinet maker's shop almost every day, eventually, after he has his tutorial in Greek and Latin, because he failed his exam. And his mother makes him feel very badly about having failed. She hates him, whatever. It is the same story in many respects. It's as if I hadn't worked out something in Call Me By Your Name. It's in Italy. It's sort of the same situation, except the boy has no sense of what sex is. Now, kids at 12 know everything there is to know about sex. When I was 12, I knew absolutely nothing. I'm not going to be specific, but you understand. The reason why is because it was that same story again with that that guy already when I was 8, 9 years old, and I was very interested in his becoming his friend. And I wanted to play that again. It's as if I hadn't finished it. I hadn't worked it out. Enigma Variation, as Call Me By Your Name, assumes that everybody is bisexual. And that is a given in the text. Now, you may agree, you may disagree. That's another story. But the fact is that in Call Me By Your Name, Elio has a girlfriend. It's in the book, he has seen prostitutes before that in the city. And it's done very sort of cagily, but it's there. And you don't know what the rest of his life is going to be like. You have no idea that when he speaks of subsequent love affairs, whether it's with men, women, or both. And you have the same feeling about Oliver as well. There's a moment in Call Me By Your Name, for those of you who read the book, when Elio goes to visit him at school, and Oliver doesn't recognize him, and he immediately suspects that they may have met in a very louche place. And suddenly it goes away because he suddenly realizes it's Elio. But I wanted these sort of insinuations to be in place. And in Enigma Variation, it's the same thing. He has a girlfriend, he's in love with a man, he's in love with a girlfriend again. She tells him that he should go back to his man because that's where he belongs. And eventually there's another revelation at the very end of the book. So you have a sense that everything is open, everything is fluid, and I do believe that everything is fluid in everything. My nationality, my religion, everything about me has always been fluid. And I believe that if ever I had a place, it would be in no man's land between two opposites.
You mentioned faith. Most of your books, including Call Me By Your Name, faith has a big part of it. Is that a conscious decision? Or?
Faith. I am Jewish, and I don't practice Judaism at all. I was not bar mitzvahed. I was asked, and I said no. Okay, that's my father. And I don't believe in any Jewish rituals. I've been to more churches than I've been to synagogues, and in fact, I avoid all religious houses. The house of the Lord is not for me. I'm not interested. And so, except that there's a sort of a spasmodic appearance of Judaism in most of my books.
They make both Oliver and Elio kind of connected because of the necklace.
It's as if there was some kind of connection or bridge between them that was there before even they recognized each other. The Jewishness was a sort of a statement of some affinity between them that they don't realize they have. But that's never been the case with me. I know that when I met my wife, I went out with her because I had forsworn going out with Jewish women. I was never going to go out with a Jewish woman again. And I thought she was Catholic. And so I started speaking about Christianity. And she says, I don't know about this. I'm Jewish. I said, oh, God.
Let's take our next question here.
Great. Thanks so much for being here and for writing such a wonderful novel. One of my favorite parts of the book, which is hard to translate to any movie, is your use of various literary references. Elio is very well read and cites a lot of different authors. And I was wondering if you could comment more about that, particularly the use of Dante, an Italian poet who, puts homosexuals in one of his circles of hell. And so, but like reclaiming that, some of that language to tell of their love story is really powerful. And just wondering if you could comment more on the use of that reference and any others.
Well, Dante's references to homosexuals, there's quite a few. I think in 15 and 16. And he's extremely nice, very kind to his teacher who was a homosexual. But I find that literary references are sometimes, they're not an attempt on the part of an author to show off his novel. That would be very bad. It's in bad taste. It's as if saying that Montaigne was showing off every time he quoted a Latin or Greek writer. That's not the case. It is a shortcut to a bigger piece of information that an author doesn't want to get into, but he assumes that you will understand the reference. If you don't get the reference, it doesn't matter, it doesn't change the story in the slightest bit. I mean, there's a line by Celan in the book itself, Call Me By Your Name, which is a beautiful verse about it's between never and always. Actually, it's between always and never. And I always believe that this is where I live, between the always. I've always wanted you, I've always loved you, and I will never have you. You know, that's really what I write about. So references are plentiful, but they're not meant to intimidate or to offend or to infuriate, as some people have said. The most important reference, and I'm just going to say this, is that the third chapter, which is in Rome, and it takes place where they're all having dinner together. It's very much of a banquet, and eventually somebody comes in who should have arrived earlier, but he got lost in his car, and he's drunk now, and he comes in and makes a speech about whatever desire and whatnot, and the whole thing is taken out of Plato's Symposium. Now, do you need to know that? No. I'm having fun as an author with it because it says something that I want only the people who know to appreciate. And trust me, nobody has.
We'll take a next question here.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, I was living in Florence when this movie came out, and I was actually trying to avoid it because I was told by a friend of mine that it was this huge love story, and I was going through a breakup, and I was trying to stay away from it, and I got dragged into the theater, and this amazing thing happened in Florence where suddenly just the rainbow kind of came out of the woodwork. It was hiding while I was there for most of the time, and I hadn't seen it, I hadn't been near it in a long time, and I didn't realize how much I missed it. In what way do you look at your work as operating in this global space, and in what way, I don't know what I'm trying to ask, I guess, because, in China, it got rejected from, or there was a conversation about pulling it from the itinerary of a film festival. So, in what way do you view your work as operating in this global public space?
In this global, I'm sorry,
yes.
I'm having a hard time because there's a lot of
it's okay.
resonance.
In what way do you view your work as opening spaces, and what do you think about the reaction that this piece is getting on the global scale?
Well, let me put it this way. I'm a very self-conscious author. In other words, there's very little that I say or do that I haven't mulled quite a bit, even if it's done very fast. I think I'm maybe one of the few writers, and this is going to sound terribly arrogant, I don't mean to be, who really know what they're doing. Many authors will tell you that, I know what I'm doing. And maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but for me, the most important thing is the sentences, the style. What does the style do to someone? In other words, if you're a decent writer, anything you say, provided it's done within a certain kind of style, with a particular kind of rhythm and cadence, whatever it is, what you're asking a reader to do is to follow in your footsteps. You're giving them your hand, you're walking them, and you say, okay, now we're going to stop because there's a comma here. But don't stop walking, we'll take another few steps further. Now there's a semicolon, we're going to stop a bit longer, now catch your breath. But once you do that to a reader, what you're forcing them to do is to believe everything you say, trust in what you say, and basically open up to you. Basically, to use a cliche, you're introducing the reader to himself, herself. That's the point of the whole exercise, as far as I'm concerned as a writer, is I'll say things about myself and lay myself open to whatever, but in fact what I'm trying to do is, by doing that, I'm forcing you, or at least inviting you, to open yourself up to what I have to say. And at some point we become really like very, very close friends. And you're saying, you know, I've always known this about myself. I've known it, you're not telling me anything new, but I never quite considered it. And I think that's what I want to bring to people. So it takes a lot of work because it's all, in my case, it's all not in the story, not in the plot. There's hardly any plot in anything I write. It's not even in the characters, whether they're flamboyant or not. It's all in the style. And that's why I said an author who doesn't understand style should maybe go back to school.
You talk about Italy a lot in the book. I should
Yes.
say, though, I mean, the country should give you some sort of an award because I'm assuming that you increased tourism there. I know
People go to Crema now.
there's a lot of obsession of, going and even touring the house or the villa where the movie was
Yes.
shot. I understand it's for sale and people are...
Nobody's buying it because it needs a lot of work. But no, I think that Italy for me is really a metaphor for the body, for pleasure, for desire, for all those wonderful things that basically make life worth living, and for love.
Music plays a large role in the book, and music plays a very, very large role in the movie. So I was wondering if you could talk about your relationship with music, if you play instruments, and then talk about how you brought it into the book, and also what you thought of the filmmaker's choices and the selections that were included in the film.
Sure. Well, let me start with the selection, because I've gone public with this. When Luca Guadagnino told me that they were going to, Sufjan Stevens was going to compose 2 songs, I said, oh, that's great. The problem is that I had never, ever heard of who Sufjan Stevens was. Never even known. I said, I was being nice, okay? And so I spoke to one of my sons, and he says, oh, he's very famous. How could you not know? So, and it was not, I mean, for me, the book has only classical music. And all my books have a lot of classical music because for me, it's one of the ways in which I punctuate what, again, same thing as literary references. It's you punctuate what is important to that particular sensibility in the book or in the voice of the character. But I think that the music that was played, I don't even like John Adams, the composer. I know that Luca adores him, so we don't get along on that, big deal. But I do think that the use of the piano music at the beginning of the film is magnificent. And I think the closing song by Sufjan Stevens is absolutely amazing. In fact, I own the music. I listen to it occasionally, and it works. It's the soundtrack. Even the Italian songs in the film, I like. So,
You must be very happy that they pretty much verbatim copied what was in the book and translated into the movie, that whole piano scene.
oh
between Elio and
yeah,
Oliver.
yeah. That's the Bach, Busoni, and Liszt thing. I love that, the fact that they kept it, and I think they did it so well because I didn't have that in the book, but when Elio plays the music, with another variation, this kind of savage Busoni one, Oliver says, okay, I get the point, so he walks out, and at that point he plays it the way Bach would have written it, and Oliver comes back into the room and sits down. And it's a wonderful, intimate moment between them.
Beautiful.
I was very happy that they kept a lot of the stuff from the book. So how could you not be happy?
Let's take another question.
Mr. Aciman, thank you for being here tonight. It's actually a good time for the question that I had in mind. The life of the mind plays a central role in the relationship between Elio and Oliver. They share language and music and sculpture. They banter back and forth. That could have been about tourism or food or sport. It could have been anything that they might have in common that you could have expounded upon. Why did you choose culture? What's special about culture and the life of the mind in a romantic relationship?
Good question. First of all, I know nothing about sports. I don't. I don't stand. I can't stand when I hear it in the background. I just don't like sports. The best I can do is watch tennis, and then I get bored. And I play tennis, so I do like performing, but the whole sort of, I think that culture is the only thing I know, and so I wanted characters who would basically not fear basically discussing culture with one another. And because culture is the highest thing I know. I mean, I read, and I treasure it. Classical music, classical text, the canon for me is extremely important. These are things that I consider are the base of a relationship. It can be. Of course, if they were both interested in pugilism and they wanted to discuss that, that would be fine too. It would bring them together. But I know nothing about boxing, so that's out of the question. But they do discuss enough culture, and Elio is so well read that he mentions people that Oliver had never heard of or had just discovered a few weeks earlier. And he's impressed. And yet Elio knows that, you know, all this culture doesn't add up to anything, because what really matters to me are the things that matter. What things that matter? The things that matter between you and me, basically. And I think that's a reduction. So it's, again, it's not that I'm an elitist, it's what I know. And I felt very comfortable moving from Celan to Homer to Heraclitus to all that stuff. It was comfortable for me. It was easy.
We probably have time for 2 to 3 more questions here.
Thanks. Hello. Bonsoir, monsieur. Thank you for being here tonight. I mean, your movie, your novel has really changed my life, I have to say. I just want to say, I just arrived from Switzerland a couple of hours ago. I'm here actually for business, but my friend Kim here from the Facebook group told me that this event is taking place. So this is just an example of how you're bringing people together from around the world. My first quick question is, are you going to come to Europe at some point to give talks like these tonight? And my second question is, you were speaking about a sequel. We're talking about a sequel. If you're familiar with Before Sunrise,
yes.
That takes place in Vienna, which is my hometown, and it sort of has some similarities. Maybe if you talk about the chapter in Rome and Before Sunrise, and maybe that could be an idea for a sequel. Thank you.
That's a good question.
Actually, it's a very good question. And the thing is that Luca Guadagnino, the director, has brought up, you know, the Truffaut series of films, and also the Before Sunset and After Sunset and whatever it is that is in between. And that is a model for a story that is not ending, and that we don't want it to end. One of his arguments is that he's trying to wait for the actors to age a bit so that he can capture them slightly later in life. And that's a terrific idea. Then the other one is that I am going to Europe, in fact, in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be all over Italy to speak. And I adore speaking in Italian because it makes me very happy, even though I make a lot of mistakes, but it doesn't matter. And then there are other places that I'm also going to, South America as well. So, I mean, there's something going on. And it's not unusual. I'm sure The Godfather has played all over the world. And I like The Godfather because whenever I see it on TV, I'll watch it. But there's something in this story that basically moves people beyond their borders in a way, and that appeals to them and tells them there's some form of love out there that is desired. And not just to be respected and tolerated, but that is actually desired. And people love to see that, and they respond to it. I mean, the ironic thing is that in China, it was slated to be in the Beijing Film Festival, then they sort of removed it from that. And the Chinese people who have read my book, there are many, many of them, and they watch it all illegally on their computers. You know, and I have never had a problem with people downloading my books and whatever. I don't care. You know, the technology exists, take advantage of it. That's the end of it. I have no problem with that. But it is a wonderful thing to hear that people who are living in countries where they cannot watch this film or read this book basically have to go through all kinds of shenanigans. They can't even order. I met a kid from Iran who was translating the book in Persian. And I said, but you can't sell this book in Persian. He says, it doesn't matter. People will read it anyway because there's this whole network of people who basically pass information from one to the other. And it's wonderful. It's almost like Tiananmen Square happening again.
2 more questions here.
Hi, yes, again, thank you so much for being here. and wanted to talk about the narration, which I feel is one of the most appealing aspects of the novel, Elio's narration. I think you tap in very well to the hypersensitivity of first love. So I think my question to you is, do you see Elio as an unreliable narrator? Is he somebody that projects his insecurities onto Oliver and his family and friends?
The answer is I don't know, because you don't have enough information. The unreliable narrator is also dead, by the way. I don't know if he's unreliable. What I wanted him to do is to make mistakes. Basically, when he assumes that Oliver has a particular personality when he's wearing his red bathing suit, but when he wears the green bathing suit, he is more welcoming, and in blue is even better, and yellow you don't know. Okay, he knows he's interpreting in the void. He knows that this is not true, but he likes to see patterns, because when you're in love with someone and desire someone and you cannot say anything to them, you want to understand what their life is like. So you're trying to take guesses at what are they doing, who are they really like. And there's a wonderful scene in the book where he says, I know he sees other people at night. I don't mind, I'm not jealous that he's with other people. I just don't want him to turn out to be somebody totally different when he's with other people. I want him to be the Oliver I know. And that's, I think, the biggest danger when you're jealous of somebody who is cheating on you, is that they become somebody totally different with different people. You want them to be the same. Okay, cheat on me all you want, but as long as I know that you are who you are consistently. He's interpreting. That's it is about adolescent love, but it's also about adolescent love when it is constantly trying to make sense of what it is and what the other person is doing. And it's constant interpretation, constant. It's tireless, and half of the time it's wrong. And it admits to itself, oh, I was wrong. He was not doing that. I was misinformed. That sort of thing. I don't know that I'm answering your question.
We'll do one more question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I just wanted, I guess we can kind of end on this. It's a nice note to end on. Any advice, obviously you've peppered in a lot of advice and thoughts on love and writing, but any final advice you have for young lovers and young writers?
Oh, God. The one advice I have, I always say this, is patience, because it takes, experience is not necessary for a writer. Because I was observing and intuiting and projecting. You're constantly projecting. You don't need the experience. I haven't had enough experience to write about this and that. You don't need it. You can imagine it, and that's good enough. But it's patience, because at some point you will know. You will just know you're no longer writing for yourself or for the publishing world. You're writing because what you're doing is important. At some point, you just know. Now, you may be mistaken, but it has to feel, no, it has to feel totally important. In other words, I'm going to sacrifice this whole year, and I won't take this job, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't travel, I won't go out at night, because I need to write this. It matters to me. It matters to me. And that's the beginning of it. Then the other part is probably the more difficult one, is to read good writers, not just published writers, good writers, the ones who really changed, basically who changed us, who changed humanity. I mean, you can't read the Iliad. Sorry, I mean, this is boring. You can't read the Iliad and assume that it's just another story. The Iliad changes you. You can't read Proust and say, okay, this is about a tormented rich kid. No, it changes who you are. It has to change you. Otherwise, you don't know how to read. But those are basically you have to choose a certain number of texts that you are willing to learn from them, because they also happen to be great craftsmen as well as great thinkers and great writers. They're really good craftsmen. And ultimately, it all boils down to me in the sentence. How are you going to lead your reader down this sentence? And that's important. Magazines will not teach you much.
That's a lovely way to end it. I'm actually surprised no one asked about the peach scenes.
Then, nice audience. Thank you for not asking.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.